We're still studying the book of Ephesus together in chapter 2 of Revelation. We're looking at a message that Jesus sends this first century church. I believe these churches were real churches, first century churches. They had real life, real problems, real issues, real good things, real bad things in some cases, just like churches do today. And so these messages are applicable not only to these people in the first century, but to all of us who are in churches today, all of our churches, all of us Christians who should be in churches, because you never find anywhere in the New Testament a believer who was not part of a local church. They didn't always do right, and sometimes they needed to be condemned in a sense of correction. They need to be corrected, they need to be disciplined, they need to be instructed, but they were always in a local church. And the local church is where Christ says, I walk among them. And so Christ is very concerned about the churches, and he's very much a part of that. And he's commended this church for all the wonderful things that they have done. They stand for the truth. They stand against error. They're doing wonderful deeds, and they've not grown weary in doing so. But they also have a problem, and the Lord wants to show that to us in verse 4. He says, but I have this against you, that you have left your first love. Well, the scholars of the Bible have talked about forever exactly what is meant by that. He didn't give particulars. He didn't lay out, here's what you have done, and therefore this is evidence that you have left your first love. He doesn't even kind of explain altogether what he means. And so we're left to do the best we can to understand what is meant by that. And I think the best understanding is that the Lord is saying, yes, you're continuing to serve me diligently, faithfully. You're standing for truth. You're standing against error. All those things you've done well, but you've left your first love. And who is our first love? Well, our first love as believers should be Jesus Christ, right? So he is our first love. He's the one that we love most passionately and most completely. And so to say that they have left their first love has something to do with their relationship, I think, with Jesus Christ. What does it mean that they've left their first love? Obviously, they have not abandoned Christ. If they had abandoned Christ, if they had walked away from Christ, then he would have much sharper things to say, and he certainly wouldn't be condemning them or commending them for the things he's already said. So this is not a wholesale apostasy. They've not turned completely away from God or from Christ. But there is something here that is very serious. To have left their first love would imply, I think, that they're still going through the motions. They're still doing the right things that he's commended them for. But perhaps the focus on Christ himself and doing this out of the motivation of love for Jesus Christ has grown cold. They still love him perhaps to a certain degree, but it's very easy to take for granted the love of Christ. It's very easy to go through the motions of serving him and serving him well, as this church was doing, and doing many very good things, but to get caught up in all those things in such a way that we are not loving Christ with the enthusiasm and the excitement and the passion that we once had. I think that's a caution for every one of us. Not just our churches, because churches are made up of believers, but also for each individual. So is it possible, if we were sitting here talking to the Lord directly, that he would say to us something like this, that we have left our first love, that we are still in the church, still going to church, still reading our Bibles, still ministering for him, but we're not focusing as we used to on that great love, that first love, that passionate love for Jesus Christ. I think that's something we always have to be concerned about, always watching, always examining our own hearts to make sure that we're correcting any variance we might have from that love for Christ that we should have. So when he says they've left their first love, I think it's a caution. And of course, that's what he's saying here. He wants to caution them about going a direction they shouldn't go, and a direction that most likely they were unaware of. And this is the most concerning thing. We can easily fall out of place, out of line. We can easily lose that kind of love for Christ and not even realize we're doing it because we're still going through the motions. We're still doing the things that we used to do. And so I encourage myself, I encourage you, I encourage all of us through the Word here, that we take a close look on a regular basis at the motives of our hearts, the depths of our hearts. Why do we serve Christ? Do we love Him as we used to love Him? Is that slipping? Is that fading? If so, correct. Correct here. Now, how do we correct? Well, that's going to be what we'll look at tomorrow. He tells this church very specifically how to correct. And so we'll look at that tomorrow together.